everybody. This is Jen Lamberts again for the part 2 of your overview. Again, my email is there. Write it down if you need it. So the next thing I wanted to go over is the main standards that will be addressed in this unit. So motion and forces are obviously your 3 big ones. So they need to be able to differentiate between weight and mass, recognize that weight is the amount of gravitational pull. Now you'll see that this standard is not covered until investigation 7. So you need to make sure that you get this in before the end of the unit. 11, explain and give examples of how motion of an object can be described by its position, direction of motion, and speed. This you will do in the main investigations 1 through 5. That's that's the meat of this unit. And then they will also be graphing and interpreting distance versus time graphs for constant speed. This is done starting in investigation 2, and they use the scale throughout and certainly until investigation 5. So these 3 main standards you need to make sure you hone in on, and the students are getting it by the end of this investigation. This is the only place they're going to get it. So when they're tested in 8th grade, it's your job to get them there. Now, this one, standard 13, differentiate between potential and kinetic energy. This is not explicitly taught. It is talked about in investigation 8, the car crash video, but it needs to be supplemented. It is a very important concept, and it's the only place it's taught really is in force and motion. So please try to incorporate this into your lessons at some point. There's a great connection to Earth and the solar system. In investigation 7, it's a close reading lesson, and it's the idea that gravity is the force that pulls all things towards the center of the Earth. It's a really good way to incorporate the Common Core literacy standards. And then finally, technology and engineering. That's that strand we tend to forget about, but we really shouldn't. One of the standards is that students understand lift, drag, frictions, thrust, and gravity in a vehicle or device. And there's a really great opportunity for you to incorporate this into the force and motion unit. Next, we have some Common Core links. You know, that's important. Your ELA counterparts will love this, but there's a lot of opportunities for reading. Now, I will be honest, I do not love this resource book. I have found that the readings are lengthy, and for some of my students, the reading level is really too high. So you really want to be thoughtful in what you assign to students. Maybe you chunk the readings, maybe you do read alouds, maybe you get the reading on tape, but definitely preview the readings before you give them to the students. There's also a lot of practice for writing. They have some really great response sheets that students can practice, using claim, evidence, and reasoning. That is huge in the Common Core. It's also huge in the new Science Gen standards. So you'll have plenty of time to be able to cover your Common Core as well. Now, your key processing skills, graphing and thinking mathematically is huge. Students will talk to you about why are we doing a math class. This is very math heavy, so be prepared for that, and I'll talk about that a little bit in the tips. Graphing skills are huge here. Sometimes you think of that as a math skill, but students really need to understand independent versus dependent variable here, and don't assume they know it. You probably will need to teach it to them. Graphing position versus time and distance versus time is really important. So there's some really good skills. I actually love this this unit when I can teach it before the science fair, because it's a very inquiry-based unit. And you can really teach kids the scientific process, which is really good. They practice data collection. They talk about outliers. They talk about line of best fit. So it's very science focused unit. Now, the first 5 investigations are essential. Investigations 6 through 8 can be condensed, but they should be covered. The first part of investigation 6 must be covered. This is talking about your forces and how there are multiple forces on something at all times. Investigation 7, part 1, understanding the idea of acceleration due to gravity, needs to be covered. They need to get the idea that the gravitational pull is about 10 meters per second squared. And then finally, the car crash video. It's not until investigation 8, but I would certainly use it before the end of this unit. And just a couple of tips. I have calculators at number 1. Again, this is a very math focused. So you need to decide, what is your goal of the lesson? Is your goal of the lesson that they determine speed, or is the goal of the lesson that they can do division? So if it's to determine speed and they have a hard time doing computation and you aren't the math teacher, you might want to give them a calculator so they're able to do the science concepts and not get held up with the barrier of they have poor computation. Or maybe they have a hard time working with decimals. There is 100% the time and place for that, but you need to evaluate your goals of your lesson and take out the barriers if you don't need them. You need to stress the units. So don't let students answer 14. It needs to be 14 meters, or it needs to be 14 meters per second, and get obnoxious about it. Make sure that they know they can't give you an answer without a unit or it's wrong. From the very beginning, if students do a homework or a classwork or anything, if they don't give me units, I'll mark it as wrong and they don't think it's fair. But by the end of the unit, they are always giving me units. It's helpful when they're trying to remember their equations, or if they're really trying to figure out how to use the correct units and convert units. So get obnoxious about it. Stress the units. I would also recommend a formula sheet or a reference tab. I will talk about something I do. I make bookmarks, but you want students to be able to use this as a reference, just like how they have a math reference sheet. I would have them have a science reference sheet in their binders or in their books or however you use it. I also tend to focus on keywords such as how fast, how long, how far. Again, I get obnoxious about this, but every time they see how fast, I want everybody to be able to say distance, and everybody to be able to say time if I say how long. I found this really helpful with working with some of my English language learners and some of my special ed students as well. And the last thing I have here is extra practice. So there are some really great sheets, really great worksheets in here. There's not enough practice. So I highly recommend you also make your own practice sheets and give students ample time to be able to practice. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you very much. Have a good day.